Silence is golden.
Yes. Has everybody else got that sign up saying this meeting is being recorded? Is it on your screen?
Yeah.
It'll go away by itself, will it?
I just pushed, I got it.
Sorry.
I just clicked continue and it went away on mine.
Mine just says got it or leave meeting.
I just pushed, I got it. And
yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, we are recording the meeting, and Chair, we are streaming live now, so you're ready to begin.
Ready to, okay. I'll call the September 15th, 2021 meeting of the Grimsby Active Advisory Committee to order. Remind everyone that the meeting's being live streamed and recorded for future presentation. I'm going to confirm the quorum. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, and Alderman Ritchie counts, I think, in that count. That's 5 of 9. So that's tight. I think there's some more indicated they would participate, but not here yet. With that said, I have to ask if there are any disclosures of pecuniary interest. Seeing none, we'll move along. Acceptance of the agenda. Everyone all right with the agenda?
Yep.
Thank you very much. I have to do a resolution at this stage, so I just need to resolve that the September 15th, 2021 Active AGAC meeting agenda be accepted. I need a mover and a seconder, please. Thank you, Bruce. And a seconder. Thank you, Ann. All in favor? I'll take that as unanimous. Thank you very much. Presentations. Ann is going to introduce our speaker, Chris Lowcock, and we'll move right into his presentation. So Ann, and Ann's muted. Ann.
Hi.
Thank you.
I'd like to introduce Chris Lowcock. He's the CEO of Prodigy Disc Canada. Chris has been involved in disc golf for many years. He's been a disc golfer since 1984. He started and ran Disc Canada from 84 to 94, the Ontario Disc Sports Association from 05 to 2015, and the Canada Disc Golf Association from 2017 to the present. He's designed and installed numerous 18-hole golf courses throughout Ontario and in some other provinces, including Bronte Creek Park, Fireman's Park in Niagara Falls, Green Lane Sports Complex in Paris, Waterworks in VA Berry Park in Tottenham, a 9-hole course at Eastview Guelph, and in Toronto, 3 golf courses at Centennial Park, Seton Park, and Toronto Island. He worked with the town or city about identifying the location, created a design and approval, and then worked with the Parks Department to get them installed. And he's here to speak with us about a disc golf course for Grimsby. Chris, thank you for coming. The mic is all yours.
Thank you, Ann. Well, it's a pleasure being here this evening with you. As Ann mentioned, my name is Christopher Lowcock, and I've been well ensconced in disc sports for most of my life, some 40 plus years. And I currently run a golf company that sells the equipment. I am a designer of courses, and the Grimsby disc golf course came onto my plate a few years ago through some interaction with Ann, and carried forward by another local individual who was also trying to spearhead and move the project forward, Andrew Leyland. So I now am working with Ann and the group to bring the project further to fruition. And there is a video that we have that we can just play while I start to talk. This is a golf course that was first introduced into Canada in the early 80s. It's on Toronto Island. Is someone playing that video in the background? So basically, disc golf is a relatively new form of the age-old game with the stick and the ball. It's the same sort of course courtesies. One will work their way down a pre-designed piece of land from a tee, throwing off their discs and taking next throws and so forth, and trying to get the least amount of throws into getting the disc within the basket by hitting the chains with their disc and having it drop into the basket. This course was originally put in by the gentleman that invented the game, a gentleman by the name of Ed Hendricks, who started, he used to work for Frisbee and Whammo, and he conceived the idea of disc golf. In the early days, it was just played where when a Frisbee, people bought a Frisbee, on the inside of it, it said play, catch, invent games, and people did that on college campuses. They'd throw around and then they'd maybe say, okay, let's see how many strokes it takes to hit that tree or that lamppost or that garbage can. And when they got better at it, they weren't sure whether they had hit the tree or that post because they didn't hear it or see it properly. And the gentleman devised a basket, which basically sits about 3 feet off the ground. It's very sturdy. It's made of metal that is powder coated, the painted portion, and the other portions are galvanized steel so they won't rust. And basically, as again, the object is for a disc to hit the chains and then it drops in the basket. So we've got a game that is pretty much been embraced by a lot of towns and cities throughout North America. There are some 9,000 disc golf courses in North America alone. If one was to look, you could go to a website called UDisc, and it's a course listing. There's also the PDJ, the Professional Disc Golf Association. They have course listings. There's also other companies that have course listings. Most courses are free to use in city parks. It's just another form of apparatus. It's like a swing set, although swing set only takes up a small area. A disc golf course, typically each hole would take up about an acre's worth of land. So it is spread out throughout the park. Most disc golf course designs are designed to sort of follow a congruent path so that one can go easily from one hole to the next. Sometimes there's dead walks in between based on whatever the park may be. It may have to have a little bit of a walk, 2-minute walk to the next hole or something, but for the most part, they just flow together. Disc golf is played with a flying disc. It doesn't have to be with a golf disc. It can be used an ultimate disc or just a regular disc. Discs sell for about $10 to $20 in the stores. So it's not a very expensive game to get involved in. At the higher levels, you can get more appropriate equipment, golf discs that are drivers, that have beveled edges to go further distances, but they're rounded on the putter side. They have a higher profile. Basically, the concept usually is that a foursome would take off on a course and walk through the course. It's just typically a walk in the park. One would tee off, they would flip for who would start. Then the next shots after all the tees would be is the furthest person from the hole would then go out, and the foursome says you're up, or whatever. It can be played with a family. It can be played single gender, co-ed, any walk of life can embrace it. Physically challenged individuals can play the game. It doesn't hold back any, you don't have to be a great physical fitness to play this. So basically it's a low cost entry level game that one can participate in. The equipment is not that expensive, but it's well built and lasts a good while. The course that you saw there that was put in the 80s by Ed Hedricks was updated in the year 2010. So 30 years of shelf life it pretty much had before it was updated. And it was the initial equipment that was manufactured back in the day in the late 70s. So the difference between the equipment now that's on the market as opposed to that is far more superior and has a longer shelf life. So the game sort of stagnated for years in its growth, but in the 90s it just exploded. And there's about 1,000 new courses that go in every year throughout the world. So there's currently just under 12,000 plus courses worldwide. Some countries have had a marvelous phenomenon that it's just taken off and become part of their, park systems and, physical education programs throughout schools, especially in Scandinavia and places like Finland. So what we've put forward is carried forward from an initial design that Andrew Leyland had created in the park. And I put a quote forward, which includes the 9 baskets, 9 T signs, a course sign, and the shipping. So the installation is pretty straightforward. A hole is dug and the equipment is cemented into the ground. It comes with a sleeve and the pole that goes in, there's a lock and collar so that they can be removed if needed for festivals or other needs or things like that. But for the most part, they stay in the ground all the time in most parks, and people play throughout the year. Once a course is installed in a town or city, the individuals that gravitate towards it, there's some people that are more, this is just an activity that they'll play once a week. Other people will get involved in leagues and they'll get challenged to come out on a weekly basis and play with a group and have fun challenging each other and playing with each other and molding friendships and growing from there. So it's a low cost, great family community activity that has great benefits. It's a sport for life, and it's got a very low environmental impact and can be installed in parks and used with other patrons that are facilitating the park also. When I do my final design, I'll just go in and double check and make sure that there's a very, I try to minimize any or what liability could or may happen. Does anybody have any questions? Yes, Sarah.
Hi, Chris.
Hello.
Thank you for that presentation. That was great. I'm just curious, is it possible to share what the design, at least the initial design plan is for the park, just for the benefit of everybody here? I don't know, sort of put you on the spot, but I'm wondering, is that possible? Or do you not have that? Okay, I thought maybe you had it with you.
I have a printout here that was just passed along to me. I can, give me 1 second here. I'm just going to go find something. Let me just see. I thought that everybody had already seen this from times before. So
No, it was a different group.
okay. Not a problem. Give me 1 second here. I'm going to share my screen. Can I have that permission? Let's see, share screen. I am going to do this one, I believe. Share that, go over here. Can everybody see this now?
Mm-hmm.
So this is the original design that I believe Andrew had made. So where's hole one? So hole one, and I'll just use my cursor, is here. So I'm assuming that this is the flow, that it starts here. This is the T down here by this curve in the road or pathway, and straight down, finishes here, the hole's here, and walk over to 2, tee off, another straight hole. And then looks like it's a little bit of a dead walk. I'll pull this up a little bigger here. Everybody can still see this?
Mhm.
So 3, 4 is a little dog leg, 5's got a little dog leg. We walk over here to 6, another little dog leg. I believe 7 comes back this way. And then we're walking back up to 8 here, over to 9, and finish pretty much where you started. So the nice thing about this design is if you're parked down in this area or entered and started here, you can finish basically where you've started. You can go back to your car, get a snack, whatever it might be, and or just play another round and get a full 18 in. So that's what I have here on paper that's been shared with me. I have not visited and come in and formalized this design. This is just what I've been presented on paper right now, and I will and can go and finish this up and make some changes and look at how patrons use the park. But I know that Andrew was in there and he does a pretty good job. Initially, that's what he had put in originally. So now how do I get back to this? Stop the share. Oops. So did that give anybody?
We're still seeing your screen, Chris.
I know, I'm trying to get rid of it. Give me a second here. There we go.
My question, the question I have is, you talked about going and visiting the park and fine tuning the design from Andrew. Would you be willing to meet with some of the people from our Active Grimsby committee at the park?
Absolutely.
Kind of review where it would.
Yep.
Does that sound good to everyone?
Yep. So I just did a design for the town of Belleville. A number of years ago, I used to run the Ontario Disc Sports Association, and part of bringing events to towns and cities was we were always looking for a legacy. And Belleville didn't have a formal disc golf course. They had some disc golf courses that had been utilized and or built at the local schools, so they weren't that creative. They were just sort of on playing fields and straight and so forth. Another one at Loyalist College wasn't well designed. And right after we had put on the provincial championships, they really liked it and embraced it, and they were trying to get a course in, but it just never happened. A few years later, I put on the provincial ultimate championships, and within a week, a Belleville, it was called Buddha, Belleville Ultimate Disc Association started, and they've carried on and been playing ultimate since. And since just full circle, now they're pushing to put this disc golf course in, and it's more the city that's taken the spearhead to put this in. So I was down there a couple of weeks ago, and I just walked the park, designed it all, and I put all the signs in the park and everything, and I left them there for like a week so everybody could see it. And it says in French and English, this is a disc golf course design in the works. Please do not remove these signs. And it just, so I can come down there, I can design it, I could leave these little teeny signs. They're just thin little, almost like little teeny election signs. But it says, and it'll say in French and English on the front, Prodigy Disc, current disc golf course in design. And then on the back, it'll either say T1, and then where the hole is, it'll say hole 1, and it'll show the footage and so forth. And that way you can get a full sort of understanding, like almost like a visualization, be able to walk through the park after I'm gone even, and say, oh, okay, yeah, we did it with these people. Now we can walk through with other people at another time. And then if you want, you can just pull the signs one day and put them in your garage, and I'll come and get them on a different day, or I can come back down, a week later and pick them all up. So that's something that I could offer to you, just so that, you know, I know that everybody's time isn't all the same and everybody can't be somewhere all together. So this may be a good solution to let a lot of people visualize and see the opportunity.
Sarah.
If I may, I think that would be great if you could do that, Chris. I think even for some of our staff team to sort of learn a little bit more about it and visualize where it goes, and maybe even flag a few spots where maybe we would want to pay some extra attention to. So, you know, if that can be an outcome from this, I think that would be a fantastic next step to looking at what would make sense on that site and kind of carrying that conversation forward. The only other question I have is the U-Disc, which I believe is an app. Actually, so a person I was just with a few moments ago who is a staff person is a disc golfer, and they were showing me the app. Is that something when a course is designed, does that content get put on an app so it can be used, or how does that work?
Yes. So, I mean, I could go to UDisc right now, the website, and pull it up and just, it'll know where I am, or I could type in Toronto and it'll show you all the disc golf courses around. All of a sudden you see like a little picture of a little basket. And if you click on that basket, it'll say like, oh, Bronte Creek disc golf. And then if you click on it again, it opens up and it says, oh, it's Prodigy disc baskets. It's 18 holes. It's cement tee pads. Here's the directions. And then a little further down, it shows, oh, this is hole 1 is 225 feet. Hole 3 is 362. So it's got everything. And basically, once a course goes into the ground, it ends up on all of these platforms, and all of a sudden you get this sort of like almost like a sport tourism thing where people that like to play disc golf say, oh, there's a new course in Grimsby, and they all travel down to it and they all play, and or hey, we're going to Niagara Falls to play there, but we're going to stop in Grimsby on our way, and that's basically how you'll get a whole bunch of people from other areas that'll come in and to play and look to check out the course. And then it goes into the PDGA directory. And if individuals are interested in holding tournaments there, we can look at a higher level of play and competition, which will bring more tourism in. Typically, you want to have an 18-hole course for that. But when you have a 9 that's already in the ground, we have the ability to bring portable 9 baskets and say, well, we can do the 9 here that are already in here, but we're going to go to this other park to play the other 9, or we'll set up another 18 over there. And then you can say, these are the 27 holes that we have for the weekend, and, off to the races we go. I did something for a small town in a place called Nomineng, Quebec, about 5 years ago. And they're on the way to the Laurentians, and they have a very active community of bicyclists that use and come through. It's a small town, and they're like, hey, October comes, place is dead. We need something else to, bring something else here. And there was a private English boys camp called Camp Nomineng that was there, and we worked with them to put an 18-hole course in on their camp facility, which is well used now. But we also used a ball golf course to put on a really high-class A-tier event, which is what we call like a top-notch event that would draw more players. And now it's on this circuit of the Quebec Disc Golf Association. And yes, they've got this one that's in the ground, but we also set something up at take over a ball golf course where we design something real fancy. Then we can have people that can be fed and, hold awards and things like that at the facility. So that's kind of like a little bit of a story, what can happen down the road once you sort of, if you build it, they will come sort of scenario. So it's baby steps, but it's a great little thing to have as a community venue. During COVID, disc golf has taken off. It's become a huge pandemic sport. Most of the manufacturers, they've been sold out of their equipment because just people have gravitated towards it. It's been a quite the phenomenon.
Okay.
Good. Any other questions for Chris? None. Seeing none. what about, I'm thinking, Sarah, back to you, any coordination of a visit or that excuse me, should certainly involve staff, youth, Parks and Rec, and some of our committee as available. How do you want to coordinate that or make that happen? Is that between you and Chris, would you say?
So it might help just to know from who is here, if there are a few people that would be interested to attend, so we know who that group will be. And then I'm happy to work with Anne through Chris's contact as well to set something up. Definitely there are a few staff we'd want involved in a few groups from this as well. So Anne, I'm sure you're keen to be there. I suspect maybe Jimmy, you would be. I know this is something of an area of interest, not to speak on your behalf, but if there's anybody else, or we can put it out to the whole group, knowing if you are missing. And then we can maybe coordinate something with you, Chris, hopefully find something that works for everybody.
Absolutely. I'm pretty flexible.
Okay.
I've got some things on my plate in the next couple weeks, but after that, you know, late September, early October, I'm totally available. I just have to go to nominating again. And
I'd be more than happy to.
Sorry.
Oh, thanks.
Sorry, it's Ken Rich here. I'd be more than happy to participate as well on the tour.
Perfect.
We lost him there. What? Did anybody hear what?
I think Councillor Ritchie's saying he's interested to attend. Give us a thumbs up if I have that right, Councillor. Okay.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Thank you. Okay.
So I'll be in touch. I was just going to add, I'll be in touch with you, Chris, towards the end of September, and we'll try to pick a date well in advance to see if it works for everyone.
Yeah, don't have to wait till the end of.
We'll pick it tomorrow.
Yeah, we can start working on trying to figure out a date for around the end of September, if you wish, within the next few days. I have no problem with that. And I look forward to meeting some people in person. I thank the other people that have taken time tonight to listen, and look forward to helping you get a course in Grimsby and growing the game in your community.
Any other questions? Go ahead, Anne. Okay.
No, I was just going to thank Chris for coming to our meeting.
Yes, thank you, Chris. That was really informative, and I think you'll lead to a lot of discussion on our part.
My pleasure. Have a good evening, and hope the balance of your meeting goes great. I will log out now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Bye-bye. You know, any further comments?
Leave.
No hands up there? No, very good. That was, I learned more. I came into this knowing very little about disc golf. So I'm starting from ground zero, and that's very interesting. Were those pictures he was showing us, Sarah, that was Centennial Park, wasn't it?
Yes, that's correct. It's Centennial Park.
Okay. I mean, do we want to have a little, some of the things that certainly come to mind is how to manage the free use, like young kids, families wanting to use it casually versus the groups that sort of set themselves up a little more team and more competitive and getting in the middle of providing time for all types of users. I don't know whether that's been an issue, but it's certainly something to contemplate. Anne? Yes, Anne?
From my experience, from my husband and my son and their friends who played disc golf, there's always all different ages, parents with their kids, and it's a pretty easygoing game. It's not high pressure, and everybody goes out to play to relax. So they just go with the flow. Whoever's there first, they go, and they wait until it's their turn to move on to the next hole. It's not like a golf course where, you know, you've paid a lot of money and you've got 10 minutes for that hole. It's very relaxed, and people are usually pretty respectful. In fact, my husband just got a call from Bronte Park saying they found one of his discs. That's how polite the sport is.
Yeah, it has some of the aspects of golf in that, you know, if you're playing solo and there's a group of four ahead of you, of course you're going to go a lot faster. But the interplay is pretty natural. Everybody kind of gets it, and when you get to the hole, like they'll allow a faster group to play through, and vice versa. It's not that big of an issue.
Thank you. Good. Are we all right? Yeah, Bruce?
The only concern is I saw the Centennial Park plan, and I guess two of the holes, I mean, that's not you know, etched in stone, the the course, but Centennial Park in the winter time is used in the slopes for tobogganing and stuff like that. So if posts are in the way, they'd have to be planned to be away from where the kids are going to be tobogganing.
Yeah.
Because the posts don't come.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah.
If
That's
I
right. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think
I
those are some of the
think
things that an onsite
great
would
that,
help with, right?
Right.
Sorry,
Go ahead, Ann.
because Chris had said that he's gone over Andrew Leland's plan that was done a few years ago, and there are a few tweaks that he would want to make to it. So I think everybody would benefit from meeting with him there and maybe making him aware of things like the tobogganing.
Yeah.
And also for us to see exactly how the play is going to go and so everyone can enjoy the park at the same time. He's pretty conscientious about that, about making sure that all of the courses, most of them are done in multiple use parks, community parks.
Great, thank you. Yes, Jimmy.
Yeah, so this question is for Sarah. You had mentioned that, there's some kind of like plan for like a multi-use trail up on the baseball diamond area, and that the baseball diamonds aren't getting that much use, so it might be reduced to one. Am I remembering that correctly?
Yes, so we are looking at that. There are more than one diamond right now. Primarily, we're just using one. And we have been looking at putting in a pathway surrounding that park, which I think we've talked about with this group before too. And definitely will lead into the conversation we have with Claire, as well as looking at how we use those spaces. So the hope would be if we can meet on site with Chris, look at how can that be done in a complementary way that they can still exist in the same space. Even just knowing that park gets a lot of use for kids that travel to school, right? And if they mainly go on the stairs, just being mindful, I think, of a couple of pieces along the way to make sure that, that they can it could coexist nicely in that park. I really liked that he mentioned about putting the flags in some spaces too, so that you kind of have the real visual of how it would flow. I think that would just go a really long way to understanding more how it would exist in the park. So I think that would be a really tremendous piece to have to help people understand what that would look like.
Great. Yeah. All right. Are we okay for now? We can move along. Thank you. I do need a resolution on this one as well. Just 1 minute while I find it. Okay, resolved that Chris Locock of Prodigy Disc Canada presented information regarding disc golf and answered questions from the committee. Somebody move and somebody second, please. Come on. Thank you, Ann. I got Ann and a seconder. Jimmy, thank you. All in favor? Good. Great. Business arising from previous minutes. And Sarah, I think you're going to give us an update on the trails plan. That's what the agenda says.
So we have Claire Basinski here with us from SEMA Plus, and she is the consultant working with us on the Recreation Trails Master Plan. And it's been a real pleasure to work with Claire, and I'm happy that she's here this evening to just run you through sort of where we are, where we're going, and what we're trying to accomplish. So hopefully you feel a little bit more in the loop as well with this project and what we're looking to do. So Claire did share some of this content as well with our staff team, and we'll be sharing it with council as well. And we're happy to share it with you guys as some subject experts as well, and active Grimsby and trails and all that good stuff. So I will give it off to Claire. I believe she's going to share her screen and run through a presentation, and I'm sure her and also myself, I'm happy to answer questions as we go along. This, of course, is just sort of still early in our journey, so just keep in mind there's much more to come, but it's just to kind of keep you in the loop as to where we're going and hopefully inspire some thinking and ideas from all of you. So Claire, I will have you take it away.
Wonderful. Thanks so much. And thank you to the committee for your time this evening. Really appreciate it. I apologize if you hear any yelling. It's bath time in my house. So that is what you hear in the background, possibly, or a dog. You never know. But thank you so much for your time. I know time in committee meetings, especially in an evening on a Wednesday, is precious. So the presentation is somewhat short and sweet, but is definitely meant to pack enough information to, as Sarah said, give you a sense of what we've done so far, early stages, and so really early information, and hopefully think a little bit more about those next steps, as Sarah's mentioned, and how hopefully we see Active Grimsby involved in the future conversations, in community engagement and outreach, and the process of developing a recreational trails master plan for the town of Grimsby. So the dreaded share my screen, which is always fun, but I've done it a couple of times today. So hopefully if somebody would like to flash me a thumbs up, if you can see a nice green, wonderful green screen, I like that. That's great. So we really are in those early stages, and a lot of what was actually said in Chris's presentation resonates so much with the trails strategy and master plan. He mentioned harnessing a lot of the great momentum from what was and has been a really bizarre year and a half, looking at some of the great opportunities that the town is exploring over the next couple of years from a recreational exploration perspective. And this is really just such a great time to start having this conversation, and we're very excited to be part of it. In terms of what we'll be talking about this evening, a general overview of the presentation, hopefully more graphic. Chris had a video, you can never compete with that. So hopefully there's enough graphics in these slides to keep you somewhat entertained. But we're going to talk a bit about the purpose and the intent of the Recreational Trails Master Plan, a little bit about the foundations and the core elements of what we're trying to achieve and how we plan to build in the opinions and interests and values of the community. We're going to talk a little bit about the elements that go into considering a trails network and master plan, of which those are the core components of this type of strategy, and some of our outcomes and next steps going forward. So that's the bulk of the presentation. As Sarah mentioned, if you have any questions throughout the slides, please feel free to throw your hand up. I have no problem being interrupted for questions. So please feel free to do that. Or if you want to wait until the end, we're happy to take questions then. And these are the early stages, as I said, so a lot of this information is going to be presented at all of our upcoming sessions so that we have the same message that is presented throughout. So any suggestions on how we could better tailor or adapt our messaging, we're always open to hearing that as well. I've worked quite a bit in Niagara region over the past almost decade, which has been my absolute pleasure. I focus my work on active transportation, trails, master planning, and design. I've had the pleasure of working in Fort Erie, Welland, Pelham, St. Catharines, developing their active transportation and trails strategies. So really happy to be working with the town of Grimsby and exploring your strategy for the next 5, 10, 15 years going forward. And so why trails right now? We mentioned some of the things, or I mentioned some of the things that Chris had noted during his presentation, but it really feels like this is just such an exceptional time to talk about trails, to talk about recreation, not only in Grimsby, but throughout Niagara region and elsewhere. It really has had such a great amount of foundation laid to be an extremely well supported conversation and topic of planning, design, and recreation, which is wonderful to see. At the regional level and provincial level, we are seeing these great supports, whether or not it's funding or it's plans that they've developed or guidance documents that say, we are really thinking about active recreation and active transportation almost first and foremost, and we're trying to find opportunities to harness that within different communities. And at the local level, the town has very clearly set out some very intentional and strategic priorities that align really well with what trails bring from a community benefit perspective, whether or not that's economic, health, tourism, social, and equity, of which there were references to that in the other presentation as well. So a great complement in terms of the different initiatives that the town is going forward with and that you as a committee are involved in. And so we really are just, I feel, and we've had this conversation many times with Sarah and some of her colleagues, of this feeling like the right time to have this conversation, and feeling like there's just been some great momentum that has already been started that we want to maintain and just harness through the development of the recreational trails master plan for the town. In terms of how we are preparing the Trails Master Plan, we did get started a little bit earlier this summer, but again, we're not too far along in the process. And we really are big proponents of engaging early and engaging as often as we can. We have a number of our own internal technical milestones and elements to our work plan and to the development of the master plan that you can see in those phases. But they're really based in 3 major milestones of community consultation and outreach, which is a very cyclical approach. We want to learn and hear and gather information from community members, stakeholders, technical agencies, decision makers, and then use that to shape our recommendations, shape our suggestions and our ideas, and then confirm it through a process as well. So we are looking to wrap up the development of the Recreational Trails Master Plan in spring of next year, but hopefully this is not the first nor the last, I can guarantee it, time you will be hearing from us. We're just getting started, and we anticipate and plan for a number of different engagement opportunities throughout the course of the project. We were really excited to launch our engagement strategy as of earlier this week through the Let's Talk Grimsby page. We've reached out to over 100 stakeholders and technical agencies to let them know we're starting on this process. As Sarah mentioned, we spoke with senior leadership, and we wanted to make sure to come to the committee right out of the gate to let you know what we're doing and to bring you along the process. Consultation and a commitment to engagement and consultation is a really intentional one of our team. And we want to make sure that we're not just giving one-off opportunities, that we are establishing a conversation around trails that is part of this project, but then hopefully beyond the lifespan of the project too. And that's where great partners like Active Grimsby, committee members, and others become a really important part of that process, where we want to be able to work together to not only engage with you, but to be able to have different avenues into the community to gather inputs. So workshops, working group sessions, we're hoping to go out to community centers and events, online platforms, and we're open to other ideas as well. So engagement has to be flexible, has to be adaptable, and we want to make sure to be able to do that so we're able to gather as much information as possible and not just have, one meeting at the bottom of a church basement at, 6 p.m. when nobody is available and can't really attend. Not to knock those style of activities, it sometimes happens, but we want to give more options and give more accessibility to the process as much as we can. So beyond the process itself, when we start talking about trails and specifically recreational trails, which is the scope and the focus of this particular project, we're really starting to talk about the conversation of recreational mobility. And there is a difference between, say, active transportation or active mobility and recreational mobility. And that is something that we really want to start to communicate as much as possible throughout this process. Trails, land-based trails, if we're being even more specific, are a bit more nuanced when it comes to how we design and plan and implement these types of links within a community. It's very much based on experience, on accessibility, the way that the trail interacts with the surrounding environment and the natural areas. There are conversations about how we need to reduce conflict and potentially risk through design and make those experiences more inclusive and equitable. But at that core, it really is that conversation about recreational mobility. how do we use a plan like this to allow and to support people who live, work, and play within the town of Grimsby to participate in a recreational way that makes them excited, enthusiastic, and increases the demand and interest around trails that you have and that are planned going forward. And that's where the conversation starts to change ever so slightly from more of that utilitarian or active transportation conversation to the recreational trails and recreational mobility conversation, which, as I said before, is the focus really of this master plan that we're embarking on. And you really are starting from a great foundation, which is absolutely excellent. The lamest pun in the book, which is, not to reinvent the wheel when it comes to trails and active transportation. And that is absolutely our intent. There is an exceptionally strong foundation of different trails throughout the town of Grimsby. We've already done a bit of a detailed review of the existing routes. Those 70 kilometers that we note here that we reviewed are not all under the jurisdiction or the responsibility of the town. That's just what's on the ground right now, what people who are in the community who want to try a trail see and experience. So that is an interesting starting point and an interesting consideration when you think of these different layers. And further to that point, there is a lot of great basis to start from when it comes to what's planned and what's already out there already. So there are routes in your official plan, there are routes in the Parks and Recreation Master Plan, there are planned routes in new development areas. The region has generously identified trails and on-road cycling links on local roads and on local lands, and even wider provincial links as well. So there are a lot of layers to this conversation that at the surface start with a great foundation of some connectivity of trails, but we need to start thinking a little bit more about how we build that out more fully and how we think of these different layers that ultimately, hopefully, the town can strategize around and aim to put forward a longer term vision for what a trails network and connectivity looks like. So that's what we're starting from. And again, a really great foundation that we are building upon and delving deeper into as we move forward with that process. And that process really is a very iterative one, starting with the existing routes and understanding what's there and what may need improvement, and then building upon that to determine where there's high demand areas, where there's high needs areas, where there's opportunities to bridge gaps, to add new links, then followed by design and phasing and costing. So a master plan at the end of the day really should give the town enough support, guidance, tools to be able to take this network, to be able to take these recommendations and say, we feel very strongly about what this looks like to achieve our priorities and our goals. And we have the tools necessary to be able to move that forward. And this process is definitely a best practice, a comparable practice that's very much used in master planning all throughout Ontario and beyond. The uniqueness is in how we adapt to the changing conditions. So as new route options come forward, I was furiously writing down about Centennial Park and the multi-use trail, and oh my, maybe there's opportunities to create a bit of a pathway system around a disc golf course. There's a need for adaptability within this process, and that's what we're always committed to in terms of trying to come up with the most realistic and implementable network for the town when it comes to recreational trails. And I apologize, I really do, for all of the text on this slide. And when we do send out the presentation, which I'm sure we will, I encourage you to read it in a little bit more detail. But at the core, what we're trying to come out of the gate early and reiterate often are those things that we tend to have at the back of our heads. And by we, I mean my team and myself and Sarah and her team and others, about the foundations of how we're developing this Trails Master Plan and this Trails Network. So there are a couple of really important assumptions or givens that we have that are framing and shaping how we are creating this network and this master plan. First and foremost, starting at the local level on the left-hand side of your screen, where we are, as I said before, really focusing on recreation and strategic connectivity in and out of the downtown core. And so that means that we are looking at off-road, more naturalized in natural and park space options kind of first and foremost for those recreational opportunities, and maybe exploring some strategic on-road connections where we'd like to see more of that design link through boulevard trails or neighborhood greenways that create a similar experience and feel for trail users. That is probably the biggest difference that we want to really set the stage for here, that it isn't an on-road plan, it is an off-road plan primarily, of which we will identify connections that link to regional routes. It's the one in the center, regional routes that have been set, or elements of provincial links that are already determined, and help us to really focus on those opportunities that the town can think about and explore from a trail, off-road, green and naturalized space perspective. So again, these are the types of foundations that we wanted to set out early and often as some of those core assumptions, and they will maybe change or be added to with time as we start to flesh out the details of this process, but it helps us to really shape that framework and set out a common understanding of what we're trying to achieve. We only have so much control as a town over certain things, elements of the regional roads, not all of them, the Niagara Escarpment Commission, provincial parks, conservation authorities. We're engaging with all of those groups. We are bringing them on board. We are involving them, but we have to be clear as the balance that we're striking in terms of how we're working with them, how we can connect with them without overcommitting on things that might not be realistic from an implementation perspective on the town's part. So I promise I'm getting towards the end. I'm not going to take up too much more of your time, but what are we trying to achieve at the end of the day? This is a long-term strategy. So it's a functional master plan that will have legs, not just 1-2 years out, but 5, 10 plus years out in terms of the timeline. I mentioned the implementation supports and tools. So as part of this, it isn't just a network with some pretty maps, but there will be policy suggestions for the town to make sure that there's trail support at all levels to be able to move forward with the implementation of this plan. There will be processes to help guide the next steps, who does what, where we can have different staff and partners involved throughout the process, where we can have some really important partnerships that help to support those implementation. There's a very strong and important element of education and encouragement around the programs and initiatives that's more neighborhood based, that's more sociodemographic and economic profile based. So what behaviors do we want to change and how can we do that through this process? And of course, not just the phasing, but what's most important to see achieved, some of those quick wins, some of those big high priorities for the community as well. So hopefully providing that full breadth of guidance that will help to move this plan forward, not just from adoption and kind of sitting on a shelf, but being used as a tool and as a way to really demonstrate Grimsby's commitment to recreational trails now and going into the future. So we have quite a few milestones coming up when it comes to engagement. All of these are listed on the Let's Talk Grimsby page, which will be continuously updated and notifications sent out and letting stakeholders like yourselves know of what's going on. A lot of this information will be quite similar because we want the message to be consistent, like I said, and clear as much as possible. We're going to start to work with those technical agencies and stakeholders through a series of working sessions and different workshop sessions, and that will culminate in a public information session on October 21st, where it'll be much more open to the public, and we'll have even more maps and information to share at that time. So this is kind of our marching orders for the next month or so from an outreach perspective. There's a lot that's going on behind the scenes from a technical work perspective, background reviews, mapping, investigations. Similar to Chris, when we plan some field investigations, you'll be the first, I'm sure, to hear about that. So we can see if there's some walkabouts that we can do or bikeabouts that we can do. But we're just really looking forward to formally publicly launching this and starting to gather information and input and working through this process, of which Sarah said is early days, but we're really excited about what we're seeing and what we're hearing so far. So thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it and happy to answer any questions that you may have.
All right. Are there any questions? I don't see all the players. Sarah.
I do see Bruce's hand up as well, but I just wanted to make one quick comment before we continue. As Claire touched on, and I just want to provide some clarity, the focus of this particular plan really is on the off-roads, the recreational piece. It's not to say that on-road is not important at all, but the plan is, and Mike Paloma even here maybe would comment on it if you want, is down the road, there is a plan to do more of a transportation master plan. The thinking is the on-road piece makes most sense there. Will the two complement and inform and hopefully, you know, weave together to create an even bigger, broader plan collectively? Absolutely. But just kind of understand that those two pieces are being separated out, not to place greater value on one over the other. We just think that logistically that makes the most sense. So just wanted to clarify that in case anybody's wondering why it's not here.
And I see other hands up, so I don't want to delay it any further, but that is absolutely a great best practice that has happened in a number of other municipalities too. Recently took a similar approach in the town of Halton Hills and the town of Milton as well. It can be historically a bit more challenging to acquire trails and design and implement trails, which is why it can be really great to have that foundation first and foremost before starting along the path, no pun intended, and I'm just full of them tonight, of active transportation and more on-road links. But sorry, Anne and Bruce, for jumping in there.
I see Anne and then Bruce.
Hi, you mentioned biking and cycling. So these off-road trails will be useful for bicycles as well as pedestrian hikers? Is that the intention?
Great question, Anne. Yes, absolutely. So while the design obviously hasn't been determined yet, the great thing about the trails planning approach is that it is so user focused that it does tend to provide a range of options. So we're aiming to look for multi-use opportunities, walking, cycling, and other active modes, if you will. I'm going to refrain from using active transportation, but active modes for that. The focus is not obviously ATVs and snowmobiles at this time, though we know conversations may need to happen possibly just about conflict and risk mitigation. The Bruce Trail, the spine of your network, I would argue, and really amazing opportunity is hiking only, and we appreciate and respect that. So there may also be some opportunities where they are single-use hiking trails, depending on where that route is and what's possible from a design perspective. So right now, when we say multi-use, back to your initial question, we primarily mean walking and cycling and more of those self or active propelled modes. What that looks like from a single or multi-use application throughout the town, we'll definitely be delving into that through a trails hierarchy and classification and more definitions around what that could look like from a design perspective.
From the logistic point of view, if it's going to be shared by people walking and bicycles, you need to make sure you have enough width, especially with COVID. To pass.
Great point.
I'm at Sandbanks Park today, and I've been cycling trails for 2 days, and I wiped out this afternoon because there were 8 people coming along around a curve on a very narrow path, and it was either them or the grass. So anyway, I realize the importance of that. The other part that you'd mentioned that I think is really important, and it connects to some of the things we talked about in the bike committee, is connecting and destinations in point A and B. And it would be good if in this trail plan you could provide routes for kids coming from Beamsville or kids from Grimsby who are heading to the new high school. That would be a really good way to help incorporate it into the community. I'm going dark because I'm at the campground.
You're outside. No, it makes sense.
I'm still here, but you won't see me anymore.
It's part of the experience. It's all good. No, that's a really wonderful point, and you may have caught, and it is in the details as part of the initial foundations. We are mapping and identifying and prioritizing different destinations within the community, within the town, all throughout. And I would say that in the early stages of that review, schools are part of the primary destinations. And we've had conversations with Sarah about how we can bring in youth and school representatives to help us think about routing and what's going to be most appealing and supportive and accommodating there. We also have some great connections in with Niagara Region and their active and safe school travel program and some of those supports too. And those conversations are always really wonderful and supportive to find that middle ground of where the school board has responsibility and where the town, the municipality has responsibility to be able to plan those routes. But hopefully bringing in all of those different perspectives and using the destination mapping as a base for that. So great. I put a really great asterisk and note beside that. I think that would be a wonderful win. And it sounds like Centennial Park is one of those places too that we need to be considerate of that as well.
Thank you. Bruce, you had a question?
Yes. With the plans for the different trails over the years that Paul and I have been involved with the Bruce Trail for years. Plus we've been on the old active transportation. So we've had Niagara College students do studies on pathways in 40 Mile Creek and Centennial Park. And is this information that you're going to look over and see whether it can help you or be useful for you? And plus two, I have reports from town master plans going back to the 70s that show the importance of trails, mostly focusing on the 40 Mile Creek, but they've always talked about the trails, but now we're finally seem to be doing something about it. So it's good to see. And if you would like to see these reports from back in the 70s, I can bring them to Sarah and she can get them to you.
That would be wonderful. That would be great. We're in these early stages. It really is about gathering as much information as possible and foundational information. If it's not too much scanning, I don't know if they're hard copy, I made an assumption. If it's not too much scanning for everybody, that would be lovely. We know that the next step in the process will be confirming what's existing and what was previously planned. And that's probably what you'll hear from us next to make sure that we have that really solidly in place before we go forward with any confirmation of routes or networks. So that would be wonderful. Any historical plans, drawings, reviews of conditions would be great. That would be excellent. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. More questions, folks? And I can't see you, Anne. If you do, you'll have to flail away in that dark.
Oh, Jimmy has his hand.
Jimmy has a question. Thanks, Jimmy.
Yeah, you mentioned kind of like a 5-year timeline at a point in your presentation. Is that 5 years like your consultancy? Is that what that refers to?
No, so our consultancy ends in about May of next year. So the full master plan will be wrapped up by spring of next year. When I was talking about the 5, 10, 15-year timeline, that's a pretty typical timeline for a master plan, generally from an implementation full build out perspective. So when we put the network out into the plan and the recommendations, what we'll be doing is breaking those routes or those different recommendations, strategies, or policies into those different year horizons to say, we think it would like to have this route put in the next 2 years, this route put in the next 5, 10 plus. So we're still ironing out the exact details of what that full build out looks like, but it's usually around a 10 to 20 year horizon for a typical master plan. And then the government has this really lovely thing where they say, and now revisit the plan again after 10 years. So it's just a bit more of a typical planning direction that we take, but we look to make sure that it's going to be complementary to how the town plans other public works or projects and that sort of thing, and bringing out more realistic recommendations from a build out or a design and construction perspective too. I hope that's helpful.
So what is the output for you then? Like at the end of your consultancy, is it just like a giant book that's like, here's the instructions and the costs and the maps and everything the municipality needs to move forward?
Great question. And I'm actually happy to send over a couple of examples of similar plans that we've done to give you a sense of what they typically look like. It is community to community based. So it is based on what the town will let us know that they need from a directions perspective. But it hopefully won't be that long. We typically like to keep it as succinct as possible, but it will include any of the background on how we got to the recommendations, a summary of our consultation process, an overview of the network and how we got there, the recommendations, the policies, the programs, implementation strategies, maintenance strategies, costing, and then a go forward plan. So it comes to you as a master plan report at the end of the day that hopefully will get adopted by council.
And in your experience, do these things survive like a turnover, like an election, and then a new municipal government?
Good question, and obviously very apropos for what's happening next year. So that's where we find it really important to make sure that we have conversations early and often about what we feel is important foundationally to the community that is really going to underpin and help to support the recommendations that we're putting forward. Obviously, I don't have a, what am I thinking of, like the looking into the future globe, that's not the word, but you know what I'm getting at there. But fortunately, trails and active transportation, but trails especially, have recently, but even in the long history, had a very good level of support. We've found from councils, it comes down to, if I'm just being completely honest and transparent, the dollar value and the timeline. So that's our commitment, always to find those excellent opportunities for quick wins where there's external funding that can be leveraged, working with the region to try and identify opportunities to build on their funding opportunities. At the national level, there's been the release of an active transportation and somewhat supportive of trails strategy, same with at the provincial level too. So it hasn't worked well, let me say, when it's, here's a big ticket item that is all on your shoulders, and that is what we expect you to do. That is not our commitment here. It's to come up with a strategy that is realistic and can have those legs and not be contentious by any means beyond the next year timeline. I hope that helps.
Yeah, thanks.
Bruce, did I see your hand? Yes, Bruce, go ahead.
What I have seen a lot since the COVID is that more people, more families are cycling, walking, rollerblading, more girls riding together. It's just been great. If we have more trails, more things for people to get active in, then we will have a carryover from COVID that people will be able to keep on walking and cycling more, because it's not just because of they've been kept from doing their jobs, so they've stayed home with their families and walked and cycled and all that. But also people I've talked to, and the biggest complaint about Grimsby is the heavy volume of traffic down Livingston and Main Street going through the main downtown. Everybody complains, from people from Toronto that I've talked to. They say they go through Toronto and come into the Niagara. They come through Grimsby, and they said the traffic is so bad. So we need things to get people to not use their cars for the townspeople, so that they're not complaining about the traffic from out of town. Plus two, whenever there's an accident on the Queenie, they come down Casablanca to Livingston and then right through town. It's always like the bypass to avoid traffic, but it congests Grimsby all the time. So we need this master plan for trails and cycling to keep people active after the COVID and after Grimsby has no more space to build anymore.
Those are all, oh, sorry, Grace, go ahead.
Nope, I'm fine. I'm finished.
I was just going to say, those are all really important points. And I would like to go back to something that Sarah had mentioned earlier, that this is kind of the first piece of a much bigger puzzle that we're seeing from the town's perspective. And, you know, trails have great opportunities. They can only do so much. So that's why I was talking about behavior change and looking at how we can not just say, oh, those were behaviors that happened because of COVID, because of what we had to experience there and are still somewhat experiencing now. We can use that to really change the conversation around getting people out onto trails for recreational purposes, for fun, for fitness, for whatever that looks like. But we know that this is going to be just kind of that first piece in solving that bigger puzzle of addressing bigger issues like congestion and other, you know, mode shift conversations that could happen, as Sarah said, in maybe an active transportation master plan or even a bigger transportation master plan down the line. But a great foundation and starting point nonetheless, absolutely, and a conversation we're more than happy to and excited to start through the recreational trails master plan.
Thank you very much, Claire. This has been great. Sarah, do you have any closing comments on this?
The only thing I wanted to say is Claire was talking about the behavior change and just sort of to inspire us about all different options, as well as I want to give the example of the dog park, the Steve McDonald dog park, for anybody who's familiar with it in our community. What has typically happened in the past is everybody would congregate right near the entrance of the fence and the dogs would run and the adults would stand. We put in a path all the way around the path, or all around the park, just a simple stone dust path, mostly just around the outside, but another spot. And the number of people we see walking the park now along the path is incredible, the difference it's made. And so, you know, we are going to talk about the big items and we always want to go after them, and we should. And that's what the strategy is going to hopefully enable us to do. But it's also those small ones that were simple for us to do. Our team did it with our own resources, had big impact that we see all the time. And so this plan is really going to give us all of those big items that we really need to put at the forefront of our discussions to make sure they don't get missed, but also some other simpler pieces that we can do quickly that do affect behavior change and really improve utilization of these spaces. So I think you're going to see a really good range of pieces that come out of this plan that's super exciting and going to give the community some tremendous impact.
Thank you.
I love that, Sarah. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say the last thing I was going to think of is the community will tell us where those are most of the time. And I found, just in my experience of doing these plans over the past 13 plus years is that if you look hard enough, or even not that hard, there's little goat paths everywhere, through parks, through open spaces, sometimes private lands, but that's not where we're starting first. And so a lot of the time, there's just some great intuitiveness to this, to picking up on how people want to get to and from where they need to go, and then working through the process to try and figure out how we can design a space that will reduce conflict and be safe for everybody, but also really get people where they want to go, that they've already started to tell us what that looks like through their own routes already.
Great. Thank you. Oh, let's see another hand. Bruce, go ahead.
Since I've been leading hikes for 25 years with the Bruce Trail, I know that what people want is to be led. They want to be shown where it is that they want to be and what they want to do. And they will, if you build it, they will come. And so if we have a good new trail system in Grimsby, people will use it and people will want to do more. That's it. Finished.
Thank you. Agreed. Are we good?
I just wanted to add that the website is letstalkgrimsby.ca in case anybody hasn't seen it yet. I Googled it, and there's we can start pummeling Sarah et al. With some surveys and stuff like that. So share that with people you know, and
do
in the off chance that somebody actually watches this video, then they have the URL as well.
Thank you,
and
Jimmy.
I'll share that to all of you, all committee members, even those that couldn't attend tonight, just so you've got that following this meeting. And please do share it through your channels. We'll be doing some posts through our social media as well on the town. So anything you can do to encourage people that you know that are interested in this stuff, get them interested to contribute, and let them know as well, this is just the start of contributing. There's going to be more opportunities. So however you can help promote that would be really helpful.
I did this, but I'm going to unlock myself because in the vein of accessibility, we understand that not everybody is also fully comfortable sometimes with the online as well. So if there is interest in having a hard copy of that survey sent to you, or in a full page hard copy, happy to accommodate that. It's grimsby.trail@cema.ca, or Sarah's email address. Happy to accommodate that. Or if somebody just wants to have a conversation with one of the team members too, we're happy to pick up a phone and go through that as well. So any avenue that you feel comfortable, I'm thinking about the general populace with this recording, any avenue people feel comfortable, we're open to those requests too. I hope I'm not speaking out of line, Sarah, with that.
No, that's great.
Thank you. That was extremely helpful, Claire, to know what's been going on and where things are going. So I think it gives us a much better basis for our input as we move ahead. So thank you very much. Thanks, Sarah, for making this happen. Yeah. Thank you.
Have a wonderful evening, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, Claire. Thank you.
Now I have to do the paperwork part. A resolution that says, resolved that the Director of Recreation Facilities and Culture provided an update on the status of the Trails Master Plan. Can I have a mover, please? Thank you, Bruce. And a seconder. Who's my seconder? Thanks, Jimmy. Good. Where's the agenda? New business. Does anyone wish to bring any new business to this meeting? Jimmy.
Yeah, I just wanted to say a couple words to the committee, getting them up to speed about the bike-friendly status stuff, because Anne, David, and myself have been talking offline about this, and we met with Sarah as well to kind of figure out how we were going to proceed. So Sarah has been in contact with the bike-friendly people, and there's kind of been a changing of the guard there. So we're not going to be shepherded along anymore, insofar as we're not going to get to basically renew our old application. We're going to have to do a new one from scratch. So that's, I guess, kind of the bad news. So we have all the past documentation and stuff like that. Sarah's provided it to us. And so Anne, David, and myself, we're going to go through together the full application. And we're going to try and figure out how to answer as much of it as we can. And we're going to itemize everything we're going to need from the town and from the region to complete the application. And we're also just beginning to kind of figure out who the people are that we need to be in touch with from the region and from neighboring townships and from people Sarah knows that can also help us get that done as well. So yeah, in doing the full application, we do kind of see some good opportunities here. We talked about, kind of identifying where the current shortcomings are, which is going to be really helpful going through a full application. And then we're also going to kind of get to look at it with fresh eyes in terms of, like destinations, like on the ground, where do people tend to bike to? Where are the major landmarks in Grimsby where, it's easy or not easy to get to from point A to point B? All of this being so that, we're educating ourselves. We're getting a lot of information to, provide to council as well, saying like, here's what we discovered going through the application process. And it's not just because we want it, it's also because it's part of this bike friendly application status too. And yeah, kind of seeing what our committee should push on next. I think that's going to be a useful output of this too, to see like, okay, well, what realistically can we do in a year or two? Yeah, the only other thing there is that the pickup dates for submitting a full application are October and April, I believe. Mm-hmm. So we kind of don't think we'll be able to do October. I mean, we'll just like take it as it comes, but we're probably looking at submitting the application next spring. Yeah, and Sarah, did I leave anything out of that?
No, I think you covered it all. I think there's some great opportunities to work through this. I think, Jimmy, what might be helpful as we sort of work through that piece, just kind of keep updating this committee on what we're finding, maybe some interesting pieces, and kind of take them along that piece as we go along as well. So there's a bunch of work ahead, but I think it can all lead to some great outcomes, as Jimmy said. So I think it's great.
Great. Thank you for the update. Yeah, did I see a hand? Oh yeah, that's a thumbs up to you, Jimmy. So thank you very much for giving us the update. And you've set the standard. Bruce and I are doing the walking routes, and we don't have an update, so you're one ahead of us. We'll catch up next meeting, Bruce.
Yeah.
Good. Any questions for Jimmy on that? No, we look fine. Any other new business items? And I don't see any hands. And is that okay? Good. Then I think we're good. Which means the next meeting is down for October the 20th, 2021 at 6:30 p.m. And being no other input, I'll move an adjournment for the meeting. I don't think I have to move that. Do I just declare it? Do you know, anybody want to help me on that? What's
correct? Yes, just declaring the meeting adjourned.
We have adjourned. Thank you very much, folks.
Night.
Hey, Kevin, are you waving at me? Hello, Kevin. Bye, all.
See you later,
Bye.
everybody.
Bruce, I'm going to call you tomorrow about our walking routes.
Okay.
Bye-bye.